Oh, that was a good way to open. That was like
Uh,
6 pen clicks. Hi,
I still,
everyone.
hi. Oh, you meant them.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
they're
I'll behave.
used to it. They're used to it by now. No, you're not going to behave. Don't tell them that.
Mm-mm. Okay. Hello.
Hello. I've lost track of what episode this is. It might be 30. We've done 30
Oh,
of these.
do we bake a cake?
Yeah.
Okay. Candles?
These episodes are now middle-aged.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, I know.
Go.
Yeah. We're continuing with the Beatitudes. And the one today is blessed are the merciful, for they will obtain mercy. And I have to be honest, right off the bat, I'm not super interested in mercy.
Okay.
I'm just saying. It's like one of the first few ones. Like, that's hard to identify with a little bit.
Okay.
But you have some great things to say about it. And I'm really excited for people who were around at Open Door when you first did these talks, because you have some stories about how in the early days it helped you understand grace in a new way. Well, that's what you said.
Yeah.
And grace, Open Door was the grace place. It was Church of the Open Sore, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I'm anxious to hear people interact in the comments, and I'm anxious to hear you expand on that story. We're going to go through a parable of the guy who couldn't pay. That's the official name.
Yeah. He had a debt he couldn't pay. Yeah. That'll be the illustration.
But go ahead, hit it, open up.
Okay, open up. I identify a little bit with the mercy thing. I remember even when I was first doing it and warming up to the material I have again, feeling mercy is a good thing, but it's not compelling. It's not this huge thing. But there is a piece in here that I remember in the early days when we first landed on this that helped us kind of look at, it wasn't a deep teaching on grace, but it helped us look at it a different way and appreciate it at a different level. So, okay, the first thing to notice, just kind of technically in the text, is there's this cyclical thing in the text. What it says is, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. So if you give mercy, you will get mercy. And if you get mercy, if you have experienced mercy coming to you and you needed it, you have a tendency to then be a giver of mercy, which is kind of one of the main tenets of this is that, like, people are often graceful who knew they needed grace. If you never had a sense of how much you needed grace, you may actually think you didn't get forgiven of that much, and you might not. One of the reasons you might not be graceful toward other people is because you really think you didn't need that much grace. The more desperate you were for grace, the more thankful you are for it, and the more easily you dispense it to others. Same thing is true of mercy. So the more you knew you needed mercy and got it, the more likely you are to give it. Okay, basic definitions. I don't have the Greek word written down here, but basically it's a kindness shown to someone in need. Okay, everybody does that, maybe sometimes. But particularly, the particular word moves it this way. It's a kindness shown to one in need, particularly one who can't help themselves. In other words, the person you're helping is in no position to help themselves. Or, this is even more compelling, if I'm in a position where I can't help myself, I'm the one who needs mercy, I hate being in this place because now I'm at the mercy of someone else. So when I'm at that place where I need mercy and I'm not in a position to help myself, I'm at your mercy. And that's a very vulnerable thing. And you can be physically at the mercy of someone, physically, financially at the mercy of someone, because you don't have any money to fix this. You're at the mercy of them having mercy, okay? Again, it's just not a place. I like giving mercy at that point, being, I'll be the benevolent one, but being at the mercy of someone, you get the point. In Luke, for instance, that place where the tax gatherer and the Pharisee, the Pharisee was saying, I think you God, I'm not like him. I pay tithes of all I get and blah, blah, blah. But the tax gatherer was beating his chest, saying, I'm not worthy. Be merciful, God. Be merciful to me, a sinner. And basically what he was saying was he was aware that I'm at God's mercy. I have nothing to commend myself. And this is where it really fits in with grace. I'm deeply aware. I have nothing to say, hey, God, what about me? What do you think? I'm at your mercy. And the more you recognize I'm at his mercy and there's nothing in me to commend myself to God that would go, okay, maybe because I'm this nice, I'm at your mercy, meaning kind of dependent. It's almost at times a bit synonymous with grace. There's nothing to protect yourself. There's nothing to commend yourself. In the story of the Good Samaritan, was the person who came along to help the person who had been beaten up by robbers and left. And that person who was beaten up by robbers and abandoned that's not the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan is the one who came to help, but that guy who got beat up was at the mercy of whoever was going to help him. So he was at the mercy of the Good Samaritan. So when the Good Samaritan helped him, let's just assume a normal human being was overwhelmingly grateful, because the more you know you need it, and the more you're aware, if I don't get unsolicited help here somewhere, I'm dead. I'm at the mercy of the Good Samaritan, and that's another part of the story. And again, the assumption is that person who is saved that way, aware of how much they needed it, comes up grateful and very willing to dispense mercy and grace. That's the connection. Another thing that I remember uncovering in the study of this thing was that, and maybe now today we could find parallels, but it's interesting because in the culture of Jesus' day, it wasn't always considered a virtue. The Romans, for instance, considered mercy to be a weakness. Can you imagine why? Why would mercy be a weakness? Well, think of some of the really horrible things they needed to do. Mercy would keep them from doing the merciless things they needed to do. And being merciless, having no mercy, was seen as the virtue. That's the guy who's got the strength to do what you got to do, and you got to do it. Mercy gets in the way of that. The Stoics actually called it a disease of the soul, which is weird. But their take on that was that mercy, if you are merciful, it makes you soft. You'll be soft. You'll be indecisive. The whole mercy thing put other people, and maybe even today, in this kind of double bind. And the double bind is they're kind of stuck, because they're not like the Romans or the Stoics, but they're stuck with the idea that it really is good to be merciful. Like maybe when you were talking about not wanting to talk about mercy today, like I really should be merciful. But the double bind is that they aren't merciful people. And now I'm not talking about you. And this is what I want. This is what I want to get. And maybe it's not that big a deal, but it always comes up in the text, because the Pharisees continue to be this symbol of false spirituality. But Pharisees were capable of merciful acts. They could do a merciful thing. In fact, when the disciples come to Jesus and say, teach us how to pray, in Matthew 5, the first thing he begins to do is kind of say, okay, I'll teach you how to pray, but let me tell you first of all what it isn't. Don't do it like this, like the Pharisees, who love to stand on the street corner and in the synagogue and show how much they pray. And when you give to the poor, they love to blow trumpets. So Pharisees would give to the poor. Well, that's a wonderful thing. Well, there's mercy right there. It is a merciful act. They are not merciful people. Huge difference. A great example of that would be like in the Roman Colosseum. Okay, and the gladiators fight, and they're fighting to the death, and all of a sudden the gladiators got the guy he's just killed or about to kill on the ground, and he looks for the emperor. Is he gonna live or die? And emperors every once in a while would go, hey, let him live. That is a merciful act. He's not a merciful person. Okay, separate that out. So here's now the question that gets to some of the stuff we've been talking about. What creates mercy? What creates, how do you become a merciful person? And this is my theory. I've kind of already said it, and I'll say it two different ways. I think the degree to which you know you need mercy, that you're in that person, in that position of helplessness, the more you're aware you need it and then receive it, to the degree to which you know it is the degree to which you extend it, if you have received it. So the deeper you're aware that you had a debt you couldn't pay, we'll get to that, and then you are forgiven the debt, the more likely you are to then, with others, extend the mercy you got, because you're just overwhelmed with the fact that I had this thing I couldn't do. I say the same thing in a different way. The people through whom mercy generally flows. Think about people you know, and they're generally merciful. It's not a lot of work for them. It's not a merciful act here and there. What flows from them is mercy. The people through whom mercy generally flows are generally people to whom mercy has come. Insert the word grace. The people through whom grace flows, they're just graceful. I mean, they're not condoning sin, but they're full of grace toward people. They're not judging. They give forgiveness away for free. Most of the time, the most graceful people you will meet are people to whom grace has come. And they, not just that it came to them, but they knew that they desperately needed it. And knowing you need it is a big key to the gratefulness there. So that's my theory. The people through whom mercy, grace flows are people to whom mercy, grace has come. And both of them are grateful because they knew they had a debt they couldn't pay. A way to illustrate it is this, that when you're aware of the need, you become more extending of grace and mercy and all those kinds of things. When I was in college, I used to pick up hitchhikers all the time. There were hitchhikers everywhere, and I hitchhiked. I even told the story, one of my favorites, of when I wanted to go to Chicago and see Bonnie, who was my girlfriend at the time. I heard some guy was moving in on her, not moving in with her.
Yeah.
Had it on it. Anyway, I wanted to get home and see her, and I hitchhiked all the way home from Minneapolis to Chicago, and that was one of the great adventures of my life. It's a pathetic life I have. But my point in that is that I don't pick up hitchhikers anymore. And I see them once in a while, but I don't pick them up anymore. And part of the reason is I forgot what it feels like to sit on a corner and need to be picked up. And that's it right there. When you forget how desperately you needed grace, you're less likely to give it. When you forget how desperately you were to get mercy, the more likely you are to forget that you, oh boy, do you remember who you are? What he did like that? And here's a text, actually, that illustrates this whole thing. Familiar text, Matthew 18. There's a slave of a king who owes 10,000 talents, which sounds like 10,000 bucks, which is a lot of money.
I don't got that.
Right. But it's not what that is. It's way worse than that. Perspective, the total tax of Judea, Galilee, and Samaria was 900 talents. The whole tax intake, 900 talents. This guy owed the king 10,000 talents. The tabernacle in Exodus 38, this is not the temple, this is the tabernacle in Exodus 38 was 29 talents. This guy owed the king 10,000 talents. He had a what? He had a debt he couldn't pay. Impossible. Then there's not enough lifetimes for him. And even that it's really a very intentional but kind of crazy parable, because you'd have to wonder, how did you incur a debt like that? He's making it up. Jesus is. Doesn't make it's not true, but he's making it up. What's the point? This guy had a debt he couldn't pay. And so he comes to the king and he starts to beg for what? Mercy. And so he's asking for mercy. But there's this little flag. I remember when I was studying it, it was what, oh, okay, there it is. This is because, see, this thing blows my, well, let me finish the story. So he begs for mercy. The king gives him mercy, forgives him the debt, okay? And he's, all of a sudden he's free. And the very next verse, this slave who just got forgiven a debt he couldn't possibly pay, runs into somebody who owes him 100 denarii. And 100 denarii or whatever the Harry it is, whatever, uh, um, is nothing. It's comparative. I mean, it's nothing. He owes him nothing. And the guy says exactly the same thing to this slave who owed the king 10,000 talents. Have mercy on me. Be patient with me. I will repay. What's ironic is the guy who owed him 100 denarii, following me here? This is weird.
Yep.
He actually could have repaid that. He actually could have repaid that. Have patience. I will repay everything, all 100 denarii. And the guy who was forgiven the 10,000 talents didn't care. Seized him, threw him into prison, demanded he get paid back. And I mean, it goes on to hear the response of the king, because he's pretty ticked at this guy who is now wicked. But what I just said there undoes my theory, right? Because my theory was that people who are merciful are people who have received mercy. And to me, where that opened up to me as a way to describe this was that when the guy who owed 10,000 talents, which was way beyond in all of his lifetime, could have never paid. In verse 26, when he comes to the king and he says, Lord, be patient with me. I will repay everything. That's hidden right in the text, because basically it's revealing he had no idea there's no way he could have repaid that. So when he was forgiven, I will repay everything, confident he can. And then, okay, you're forgiven. There is no sense of, I can't even believe what just happened, the grace I just got. I can't even believe it. He did believe it. He thought he could repay it. It's not that big a deal if you can repay it. And I think that was the fly in the ointment. I think, in fact, I don't know how big I would get about this now, but I remember we were kind of unpacking the whole message of grace, and people who weren't, you'd kind of wonder, why am I not more grateful for grace? And how dare you be judgmental and want to grab him by the neck when, do you remember you had a debt you couldn't pay? Well, maybe you never got grace in the first place. Honestly, maybe you just mouthed the words and never. Got some help out there? Yeah.
I'll edit that out. Don't worry.
Can you?
No.
Can't do that.
Just keep going. You're good.
I can't. Yeah. So maybe they didn't even get grace, but the other thing is that they forgot. They forgot.
Yeah.
And I think where I would bring this, I think in terms of mercy and becoming a merciful person, and not just doing merciful acts. I think it's easy to forget in a blink of an eye. You can think you weren't forgiven of that much. And when you start to think, even subconsciously, you weren't forgiven of that much, gratitude is gone, and so is mercy. Gratitude is gone, and so is mercy. And so I would end by saying this, a safeguard for this to me, and I hope it's not too simple. And I think it's like almost a spiritual discipline. I really do. I'm thinking about it this way just now for the first time, that I think in one way or another, it's important to build into your rule of life an awareness that I had a debt I couldn't pay. I think going to the table, the communion table, is a very incredible, very intentional way to every day, every time you go to the table, take the bread, take the cup, join with other people who are needing that same bread, and remembering, it's, if I'm going to keep this mercy thing, I need to remember where I'm from. I had a debt I couldn't pay. Who do you think you are? Like that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who do you think? Right. Because you were that guy, and now you've become that guy. So either you didn't get it in the first place, or you forgot. And I think we are forgetters. So remember, this is a verse we used in the last session. Remember that at one time you were separate from Christ, whether you knew it or not. Remember that you were strangers from the covenant, excluded from the commonwealth, without hope and without God in the world. But now, because of Christ, You who had a debt who you couldn't pay, were so far you couldn't get close. You who were far have been brought near. You who were outside have now are inside. You who were cut off, excluded, are now included. It's more even than needing mercy. However, you were dead in your transgressions and in your sin, but God, because of his mercy, saved us. And so that's where mercy fits in.
That'd be a great Easter sermon.
Would it?
Yeah.
Huh, what's Easter about again?
I forgot.
Anyway, sorry about the barking dog.
I don't care. Really though, what a wonderful way to think about Easter and the meaning of all of that, and the tearing of the curtain.
Being far off and being brought near.
Because I think about
remember
being a Gentile, and we talked about in an earlier episode, I don't remember if it was the last one, but those who were allowed inside the temple and those who weren't.
Yep.
And I wouldn't be one that would be, being a woman, being a Gentile, there's a whole ton of
that's
reasons.
a long list for you. I know.
I know. Don't share them all on here.
I won't. No, I really, I don't know. I talked a lot here and went around, but I really think there's a who do you think you are that gets to my soul when I think about this. Like, and those times when we get all uppity and how dare they and indignant about someone else's behavior and remember.
Yeah.
And maybe you forgot because you're not that big a deal.
Mm-mm.
And I'm not looking at you that time. I looked at me.
You can say it to me. I'll say it back to you.
The people through whom mercy flows are generally people who know mercy has come to them and they're grateful.
And maybe that's all we need to do today is remember the mercy that has been outstretched to us. Because maybe you haven't experienced that in your life from the humans you do life with, but there is a God who says, I will extend mercy to you over and over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's yours.
Yep. And you can't pay it back. And the more desperately you are aware that you need it, the more likely it is that it will free you up to become that kind of person yourself. But anyway. It
doesn't just only speak of how to, that's what I love about the Beatitudes. Maybe this is theologically unsound. You can correct me if it is. But I don't just love that the Beatitudes set up a way to live like Christ, to follow our rabbi, but it also speaks to the kind of God that we follow and how he is so different from other gods. What other gods show mercy like this?
No,
what other God can you go to that you can plead and beg for mercy, and he lavishes it on his people? Yeah.
There were no other gods. I mean, particularly, it's fascinating to read the history around this. The Hebrew God was the only God like that.
Right.
And that was what was so amazing about Judaism and then taking the form of Christ. And yeah. The other thing that's cool about the Beatitudes, it's not telling you how to act. It's very descriptive. It just kind of lays it out, and it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
People who give mercy get mercy, and people who got mercy give mercy. That's just how it is. So how you doing? Where are you in that thing? Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, very, very challenging. And really good news.
Yep.
Thanks everyone for hanging with us. We're going to keep at it. Still really fun to connect here, and Dave still hasn't done anything irreparable online, so we can keep
irreparable going. I think it's irreparable. I don't care.
Well, it just depends on irreparable or now I can't even talk anymore.
Okay.
I had too much coffee.
Pure in heart next time. I love that one. That's a good one. Blessed are the pure in heart.
All right. We'll see you guys then. Bye, Dave.